Hello and welcome back to my channel. Recently, I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks that pertain to the ongoing gender war in our society. I've listened to the sides of men and women. The more I learn, the more nuance I observe. I recently finished the book Why Women Deserve Less by Myron Gaines, and it became evident to me that we need to listen more to the feelings of young men who are in the red pill community or who feel excluded and alienated by a society that doesn't value them. I'm not saying that they are right about everything, but it should concern us that these people are suffering, and perhaps there is some validity to their beliefs about women. Women around the world are not all the same. Culture plays a huge role in shaping the way women think and behave. Culture also plays a role in what men find to be beautiful and desirable. The more narrow the spectrum of desirability, the more homogenized women will be because they're all striving to meet the same limited criteria. There are beauty standards that dictate every physical feature of a woman's body, but there are no inner beauty standards for women. A cruel, vindictive, and spiteful woman is just as desirable as a woman who is caring, honest, and sincere, as long as they both meet the same outward beauty standards. A woman is a 10 based on how her body looks, not because of the content of her character. Therefore, there is no incentive for women to be good people. There are men who have been treated badly, who have been used up by the women in their life, and who have practically no success with relationships at all. A lot of these men fear women. They fear rejection. They fear being accused of doing something egregious unintentionally. In today's cancel culture, when women have more power than ever, simply having the wrong opinion can result in a man's banishment from online communities and dating apps. The result is that there are entire subcultures of young men who are very lonely and isolated. Something like 1/3 of men ages 18 to 24 have not had sex in the past year, and there's no denying that it's taking a toll on their mental health. And so I ask the question, what is wrong with modern women? Beauty standards exist to emphasize the already existing sexual dimorphism between men and women. Sexual dimorphism refers to the biological differences between males and females, which for humans is relatively low compared to other related species. Generally, men are hairier than women, and so women shave their legs. Women have mouths that are pouty and pink, and lipstick makes them look even more pink and defines their shape. Women's clothing is designed to enunciate a woman's waist-to-hip ratio, which is larger than men's. With hairstyles, men have short hair, women have long hair. It's all for the sake of making us look more different from each other than we already are. The more sexual dimorphism present between a man and a woman, the more attracted they are to each other. This is because highly feminine and highly masculine secondary sex characteristics correlate with high levels of estrogen and testosterone, respectively, which indicates higher fertility rates. It's also an indication of immunological health in both men and women. When men grow out their beards, it enhances the size of their chins, and larger chins suggest higher levels of testosterone. Several studies have been conducted using eye tracking and other methods that measure a person's visual preferences of feminine and masculine facial traits, along with their level of attraction to those traits. Studies show that the more different men and women look from each other, the more attractive they are perceived to be. So in society, men have higher status than women, but women have higher desirability, meaning that men desire women more than women desire men. Status isn't something that comes from within. Simply being more confident or having a higher level of self-esteem and competence do not guarantee social status. Status is something assigned by society that's considered prestigious and determines a person's social ranking. Some of the things that determine a person's social status include characteristics that people are born with, as well as other certain accomplishments achieved during a person's lifetime. The three main components of status include wealth and income, gender, and race and ethnicity. Society also ascribes social status to popularity, dominance over peers, occupation, degree of education, beauty, youth, leadership, and power. Additionally, there's a correlation between a person's perceived morality and their level of status, such that if it's a story about an oppressor and a victim, the victim will likely receive more status as long as they're the more moral person. Historically, men have always had higher status than women. This meant that virtually all social institutions had male leaders, and that society in general was designed for men. Men were the standard. Jobs were designed for people who had a certain level of physical strength, people who couldn't get pregnant, and people who didn't have their monthly hormonal cycle affecting their mood. Originally, this was a barrier for women who began entering the workforce in the 1960s and came to be known as the glass ceiling. At first, women could only get so far up in the management of a company because the promotions were reserved for men. Today, women outnumber men in universities. According to PewResearch.org, 35% of workers in the country's 10 highest paying occupations are women, and this list includes physicians, CEOs, dentists, and lawyers. While it's not 50-50, it has increased substantially since 1980, when that number was only 13%. Laws requiring employers to hire women and pay them the same as men have led to women composing 50% of the workforce and have allowed women to advance within corporations to the point where they are making six figures and hold positions of power and influence. The increase in education, wealth, and power have accumulated and have caused women to gain social status like never before. Women have earned respect from men and the rest of society and have moved up collectively in the social hierarchy. Certain industries are still dominated by men, but they tend to be manual labor jobs that women simply aren't interested in. The gap in social status between men and women is closing in, but the problem is that the differential in status serves a purpose. It contributes to sexual dimorphism, and the more status women gain, the less sexual dimorphism there is. Women's hypergamy drives them to pursue men who are more educated than they are, who make more money than they do, and ultimately have more status than they do. The problem is that as women move up in the social hierarchy, there are fewer and fewer high-status men to choose from. YouTuber Chris Williamson calls this the tall girl problem. If a woman is 5'11" or 6 feet tall, she's going to have a harder time finding men who are taller than she is, even if she's a supermodel. A woman who is economically successful and holds social dominance over other people will want a man who is even more successful than she is. What's becoming clear is that in the past, when men ubiquitously had higher status than women, it created a delicate balance between the sexes that aided in the ability of people to find mates. It maintained a structure of equilibrium. Women have always been more desirable than men, and the evolution of civilization made up for this by placing men above women in the social structure. This form of imposed asymmetry increased sexual dimorphism, creating a stronger attraction between the sexes, and kept everyone's egos in check. Today, with women having more and more status, they still remain the desirable ones because the male sex drive is so potent. However, men are less motivated now because for so many of them it seems impossible to achieve an optimal social ranking that allows enough women to be interested in them. And this is evidenced by the presence of men's groups like MGTOW. The more status women have, the more lonely and miserable they will be for lack of men to have committed relationships with, as they carry the burden of chasing both status and desirability. Everyone loses. Women have a tendency to be self above tribe, whereas men are more likely to be tribe above self. Women experience reality more subjectively, and they filter it through their own perspective, with their inner world being the point of reference. This is known as female solipsism. Solipsism is not the same thing as narcissism. With narcissism, it's about getting the people in your life to verify a false self. Solipsism is a form of self-centeredness in which the person is focused on their own thoughts, feelings, and experiences over the thoughts, feelings, and experiences of other people. However, This is a result of them being oblivious instead of being intentionally dismissive of other people. People who are solipsistic are primarily focused on what's happening to them and what's going on in their internal world. Solipsistic people also have a tendency to relate topics of conversation to the self. Red pill men often make the claim that female solipsism is responsible for the innate lack of morality within all women and explains why women are selfish. I disagree with this. I think female solipsism is related to introverted sensing, which is a cognitive function that is associated more with women than men. I myself always believed that I'm the center of my own universe, but I understood that everyone else is also the center of their own universe. It's not a product of innate immorality or a character flaw. It has more to do with the unintentional lack of awareness of others. As far as being selfish is concerned, it makes sense why women are more solipsistic than men, because for thousands of years, people lived in small groups, and women had to breastfeed their children until they were about 5 years old. If an attack was made on the group, evolution favored the women who saved themselves first, rather than trying to defend the tribe, because if a woman died in that instance, her children would have little to no chance of survival. Essentially, if a woman were to die, her children also died. Female solipsism isn't nearly as nefarious as men in the red pill community make it seem. In the book Why Women Deserve Less, published in 2023, the author Myron Gaines says that women have been given everything they wanted: rights, independence, a welfare state, birth control, reproductive rights, affirmative action, college educations, DEI, and other changes to society. Additionally, men still shower women with romance, flowers, candy, wedding rings, weddings, and date nights. And yet, women are still not satisfied, insisting that until equality of outcome has been reached, women remain second-class citizens who live under the oppressive thumb of men. But the truth is that the male sex drive gives women preferential treatment, and this is outlined in the book. Men will throw their friends under the bus. They will approach conversations with women with trepidation, lying to them to avoid hurting their feelings or, even worse, offending them. It's not just men, but all of society has historically given women preferential treatment because women are born with more reproductive value than men. Women can only give birth about once a year, but one man can impregnate 100 women in a short period of time. And so society doesn't need a lot of men in order to sustain or grow its population. This is why men die in war. This is why men do the heavy lifting. Women, especially pregnant women, are given deference because society acknowledges their sacrifice as mothers. Women are coddled by society through legalized abortions, no-fault divorce, government subsidies, alimony, family and custody courts, and the prioritization of feelings above all else, especially in universities where there are 6 women for every 4 men. Removing the repercussions of sex through birth control and legalized abortion has created women who are treated like emotional, helpless children. According to Jonathan Haidt in The Coddling of the American Mind, we know that when children are spoiled, they grow up into people who are unable to take criticism or tolerate any discomfort, and who tend to be narcissistic and self-absorbed. Pampering women does not help them. Reinstating consequences for women's behavior is the only way to naturally sort this out. If someone signs a contract that is legally binding, and then they try to terminate that contract, a court will order that person to pay for damages, and then the other party will receive compensation. In other words, there's a penalty. If you sign a lease and then decide halfway through that you want to break your lease, you'll more than likely have to pay for early termination fees, legal fees, and it will probably affect your credit score. In our society, apartment leases are taken more seriously than marriages. Marriage is a contract in which women now benefit from breaking. They receive biased treatment by family courts. They're awarded alimony and child support, and they don't even have to prove that their husbands did anything wrong due to no-fault divorce. The abolishment of legal abortion is one way in which our society can restore consequences for sexual behavior. It may be acceptable and normalized now for young women to have premarital and promiscuous sex, but that will change if abortions are no longer an option. It will be a difficult adjustment at first. Men will probably ignore the reality that sex can result in a baby. But once young women begin to experience the consequence of pregnancy and childbirth that naturally accompany sex, that standard will quickly change. It will become less acceptable. Women will start being more careful of their actions, which will make them more mature and less insufferable. Due to abortion and birth control, women are now participating in sexual activities that should naturally result in them getting pregnant and giving birth. By removing the consequences of sexual behavior, women are doing things that should make them mothers, but don't. What kind of effect does that have on their psyches? The same could be said about men who should become fathers after having sex with women, but who don't. The difference is, unlike men, having a baby for a woman is a rite of passage into adulthood. Women are making adult decisions without actually being adults psychologically, because they're not going through the phases of maturation that turns a girl into a woman. When girls become mothers, generally speaking, they become less selfish, less self-absorbed, and more caring for the people in their families and society at large, because they care about their children's future. Becoming a mother means making a sacrifice for the greatest bond between two people that can ever be achieved. One of the results of the sexual revolution is that we have all of these people who should already have grown into mature adult women, but who are behaving like teenagers. And these are the people who are advancing in their corporate careers, slowly taking over societal institutions and gaining massive amounts of wealth, power, and status. If women are no longer transitioning through the developmental phases of their lives, which brings them wisdom, then how can they make mature decisions? It may seem like I'm unfairly focusing on the problems of women and ignoring the bad behavior of men, but people talk about the horrible stuff that men do all the time. Men's flaws are well known, and they've even been classified into varying degrees of toxic masculinity. The truth is that men have become emasculated to the point where we can no longer depend on them to lead us out of the mess we're in. It takes courage and change for people to change society. And we have stripped men of their fortitude and confidence to the point where they're not capable of leading anyone anywhere. Therefore, the people who actually have the power to change society are women. Think about it. The first wave feminists were able to amend the Constitution and make alcohol illegal for 13 years. While I don't fully support first wave feminism, it was a movement led by working class Irish women who were sick and tired of their husbands blowing their paychecks on hookers and booze. They had a problem, and they came together collectively to solve it. If the women of 100 years ago could accomplish all that, just think what modern women could do, now with the internet to use as a tool at our disposal. Whenever men try to voice their opinions about anything concerning women, they are met with an uproar of angry feminists. The most recent example of this happened to Harrison Butker of the Kansas City Chiefs when he dared to tell a room of Catholic college graduates that marriage and children make women happy. This atrocious act resulted in a backlash of outraged feminists calling for his career in the NFL to be terminated. How dare he agree with the Catholic Church? I know this is controversial, and I never thought these words would ever be coming out of my mouth, but I think we have to restore the social status of men. We need to restore the responsibility of our society unto men once again. We need to humbly accept our role as women and allow men to lead if we ever hope to live in harmony with them. We need to show them the respect they need to feel like alphas if we want to marry alphas. Unless women do these things, we will continue to live in misery, hopelessly attracted to men who are incapable of being good fathers because they prioritize their own sex drives over anything and everything meaningful in this world. They will chase and discard women. They will abandon their children. But for real change to actually take place, we as women must care enough to change ourselves. So, thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it to be educational and enlightening. As usual, feel free to leave me a comment down below if you want to share your thoughts with me. I would appreciate it. And so thank you again, and I will see you in my next video.